So, does God use suffering in order to either teach us a lesson or draw us closer to Him? Hi, my name is Timmy Gibson. I'm a former evangelical pastor of 30 years, a former evangelical Christian for 50 years. Now I'm agnostic, and I have a story to tell. And it's my journey walking away from evangelical Christianity, fundamental Pentecostal, so charismatic, like the pretty extreme, right? I realize all Christians aren't the same. Well, there's some 33,000 denominations. I mean, there's a lot of different expressions of Christianity. So clearly not everyone that's a Christian falls into this particular category that I talk about. So one of the craziest things that I taught as a pastor and believed as a Christian was that God was causing suffering in my life as a way of purifying me and to, like gold going through the refinement kind of a thing, where He had to burn it out of me, which is interesting because along with that same thought, the belief was also, not only was God testing you, but if you were doing anything great for God, the devil was out to get you. And I've talked about that before in earlier videos, and it reminds me of the story in the book of Job, which again, I, as an evangelical Christian, believe that story was factual. I didn't believe it to be allegorical or fictional. The Job story, how I used to believe it, was it's an actual real story about a real man named Job in the land of Uz. And as the story goes, I think the book opens up in chapter 1, verse 1, that Job is from the land of Uz, and he's this upright, upstanding man without blemish. He was a perfect man, is kind of how the story goes. And when you continue to read the story, it's weird because the devil goes to God to talk to God about Job and saying, well, of course, Job is serving you because your hand is upon him. You're blessing him. Why wouldn't he serve you? Life is great for Job. Take your hand of protection off of him. Let me get at him. The devil's saying this. And we'll see if he still serves you after all of this calamity that I'm going to put on him. And as the story goes, this wager that the devil made with God goes, and God accepts the wager and says, you can do anything you want, just don't kill him. You can't kill Job, but you can strip him of his wealth, strip him of his family, his children, his crops, his cattle. Like, you can do all that. And he does. As the story goes, the devil just basically strips everything from Job, even to the point of where Job's wife comes to Job in the story and says, you should just curse God and die. Read the story for yourself. If you have a Bible, Job, it's the book of Job. If you don't have a Bible, you can find it on the internet. Just Google it. The story of Job. So that story, when I would teach that, again, as a factual, real story, was a thing that I used to try to teach that God was using suffering as a way to perfect you and or test you and to see how deeply committed you were. Were you only serving God for the blessing, or were you serving God, truly because you really wanted to serve God? But what's so weird about that teaching, what's so crazy about the teaching, and I know this, it's funny. I just had coffee actually with a friend who is still an evangelical Pentecostal type Christian. And he made this comment. He said that God uses suffering often in children to lead the parents closer to God, back to God, where they become dependent on God. Even in death of a child, God will use that to draw, that's the most important thing, is drawing people closer to God. That is completely ridiculous. That is such a made-up, mythical, nutty belief. And yet, I used to believe it. And it was reinforced today, like not reinforced in me, but when I heard this, I had kind of forgotten about that belief, to be honest with you. I'll be honest, there's a lot of the Christian belief that I had that, I'm 6 years past it now. So, there's some things that I forgot that I believed. And when he said that, I was like, oh, that's right. I do remember believing that, if I was really living right for God, that, man, I was a little scared of the devil coming to get me. And then if I'm also living for God, I got to be careful because God himself might want to get me. Talk about the fear and all the crazy stuff that goes on in the mind of someone who's taking all of this stuff literally true, like I did. And I have a gnat in here. Anyway, so that's one thing. Would you say, where does suffering come from, Timmy? Well, suffering just comes from it's just a part of life. And have you ever noticed that Christians suffer the same as anyone else in the world? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like only atheists get sick or only atheists lose children, only atheists go bankrupt, only atheists get addicted to drugs or whatever. Like, no, Christians. I was a pastor. I had 300 people in my church. And amongst those 300, I had people that went to prison, people that were addicted to drugs, people died, people lost children, people, on and on and on and on and on and on. Same, no different. So where does suffering come from? Suffering just comes from life. Suffering is just a part of life. And, at the end of life, no one escapes death. Like, death comes to everyone. I don't care what you believe. Death comes for us all. Okay? Now, clearly there's some natural things. I'm not going to get into this, but, obviously there are things that we could do to better our life, to be more healthy, right? All that. That's not my expertise and whatever, but that stuff. Look it up on other videos. All right, another crazy thing that I used to believe, and again, today's coffee with this Evangelical Pentecostal friend of mine reminded me of it. So he said something, he talked probably 98% of the time that we were sitting there, and even gave me a gospel tract to read, which, he's a friend, he's sweet, whatever. So, but it was something interesting that he said. I asked him, he was saying something about going to see the Creation Museum and the Ark Experience, which is, I think, down in Kentucky. That Ken Ham nutball guy that tries to say that creation is a scientific fact and the earth is 6,000 years old. Boo! Anyway, so my friend said that he had recently gone down there and gone to the Creation Museum, and he said science proves creation is the only, what did he say? The only viable answer to how it all began. Something like that. And again, in my mind, I'm thinking, really, if that was true, then why aren't we teaching creation in public schools and in universities? Like, why is that not something that's taught if it's like scientifically true? Like, I would even, if it was scientifically actually true, like I would even say, well, yeah, of course we should be teaching that, right? If it's science backed by science. But then when you said that Ken Ham name, I was like, oh, I get you. God science. Okay. All right. So anyway, he proceeded to tell me about different things about the experience, which is fine, which is cool. I'll be honest. I'd like to go see it at some point. I don't believe any of it's true, but I think it'd be kind of cool. And anyway, so he said that, the earth is 6,000 years old, which I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I'm thinking, no, like, that's not even debated anymore. Like, it's for sure ancient. That he casually said it, almost like, yeah, the earth is flat and it's scientifically proven that it is. It's like, what? No, it's not. Like, what are you talking about? That's like for real not true. So like I'm just sitting there just drinking my coffee. I'm like, okay. Just blown away. Anyway, then he went on to say, because I said something like, oh, well, I thought science like is confirmed that like for sure the earth is like ancient. And he said, no, carbon dating has been debunked. Carbon dating is not true. That's wrong. I was like, oh, okay, continue on. Let's see. You think, Timmy, really, you didn't say anything? I didn't. I just kept asking questions because I could tell, I could tell, when someone's just completely convinced of something, there's just nothing you can say. You know what I mean? Like, it's so, I don't even know the word, but that confirmation bias, it'd be like talking to someone politically about politics, and they're on the opposite side of you, let's say, and there's no, like, you're not going to say something, they're going to be like, oh, that makes sense. Like, they're rooted and grounded in what they're believing, and you're rooted and grounded in what you're believing, typically. Anyway, unless you find someone that's kind of more open-minded and kind of a moderate, down the middle type person, which is funny. People on the far right think that you can't be that way. People on the far left also think you can't be that way. It's so weird to me. It sounds so religious culty when you start having that conversation, just like religion. It's like, what is going on right now? Anyway, so then he continued to talk about like Adam and Eve and I said, I think we've kind of like know for sure through science, through DNA that humans go way back. And he goes, oh no, that's not true. That's been debunked. I'm like, really? That's real? Like, really? That's been debunked? It's like, he's saying these things so, like if it was anybody other than like someone that knew, like he just said it so matter-of-factly, like, oh, okay. So, carbon dating has been debunked, ancient humans, that's all been debunked. Neanderthals, that's not true. That's just modern humans who are more cave-like because in early days, whatever. And then humans, walk the earth with dinosaurs. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm pretty certain, like, that we know for sure humans and dinosaurs didn't coexist. But at the Creation Museum they do, and they did, right? It's like, but that's not backed by science. Like, there's no evidence. In fact, the evidence is overwhelming in the other direction. And again, all these things I'm hearing, I'm thinking to myself, oh my Lord. Like, this is like what I was like 10 years ago. Just blindly accepting what you hear from your particular narrative and that confirmation bias, and you're living in this echo chamber. And, a preacher said that carbon dating has been debunked. It's not true. And you just hook, line, sinker, take that to be true. And then you regurgitate it when you're talking to someone like me. And it's like, wow, that's fascinating. But again, the crazy things that I believe, these are some of the crazy things that I believe. In fact, I may have said this in another video. One of the craziest things, actually, I'm pretty sure I did say this. I was taught in Sunday school way long ago that dinosaur bones, they weren't even real. Like, that was those are fake. That the devil put those here to lead us away from God or something. I don't know why why would dinosaurs be a threat to the Christian message if it was real? I don't know. I don't get that. So anyway, one last thing that I used to remember or remember believing is that anytime there was any kind of sickness or disease or any kind of calamity or issue, hard times, it's funny how there were so many different beliefs and they somehow all didn't coincide, but somehow in my brain they did at the time. But anytime you had any kind of sickness or disease or trouble or difficulty, it was stemming from some kind of sin in your life that you needed to repent of. So if you were having some issues, you needed to dig into your heart to find out where you were at in sin and repent, so that could be corrected, so that then you could get healed. Absolute zero evidence for that. Absolutely one of the nuttier things amongst the many nutty things that I used to believe as an evangelical. Again, thank you so much. Like, subscribe, make comments. I would really, really appreciate that. I'm going to keep doing these videos, like I said, every Wednesday, every Sunday, and then whenever I want to do one. But for sure, every Wednesday, every Sunday, you can count on a video. And I plan on doing a live. I want to do a live event coming up. So I'm working on what that'll be like. So I'm excited to do that. I hope you'll join me. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate all the love. You guys show me so much love. I just can't even tell you how much I appreciate it. And the fact that you want to hear my story, I hope it helps you. I hope it either offers you some kind of comfort, some like security for your journey, and it does you good. All right, guys, peace.